In today's show, the regular season schedule is out. We know who the Blazers are going to play during the 2025-2026 season. We know when they're going to play them too. Let's break down everything else. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You're listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making the show your first listen. Coming at you 3 days a week, most weeks in August and into the first couple weeks of September, and then we'll be back to 5 days a week once we get closer to the season in mid-September. But for now, we're rolling along 3 days a week, plus bonus episodes when the team gets sold. You're listening to Friday, August 15th program, and today we are talking all about the 2025-2026 regular season schedule. The NBA on Thursday officially released the entire schedule. We know who the Blazers are going to play, at least in the first 80 games that are on the schedule. The other two we will talk about in a moment. We'll get into everything you need to know. That's what we're going to do in the show, is break down all of the nuts and bolts, the ins and outs, and everything you need to know about the schedule. I want to start here. Like, you know, the sort of classic joke is like 41 on the road and 41 at home. Well, now the way the schedule works, first of all, they only release 80 games because there's the in-season tournaments, and then based on whether you advance in the in-season tournament or you don't advance in the in-season tournament, you get paired up beyond that. So the Blazers will get two other games during the second week of December. That's December 9th through 16th, somewhere in that second week of December. They'll get two extra games. Conceivably, if they advance in the in-season tournament, they will also get extra games during that second week of December. Excuse me, but like in general, I do not think the NBA season schedule matters really. It matters for you and your homies who like going to the games, because you can look at the schedule and say, this looks like a fun weekend. This is a fun weekend. Oh, we could go to Minneapolis for this weekend. Oh, we could go to Milwaukee. Oh, this would be a nice time to go to New York and see them in Brooklyn and in Manhattan. Like, it's fun for planning. It's fun for getting excited about. It's fun for like looking at the games and kind of, having the anticipation of the NBA season that will start, in a couple months. It is not particularly predictive, especially now in August. That doesn't mean that it's not worth parsing. Like, I'm going to parse it here. We're going to spend a half hour doing that in today's show, 25 minutes doing that in today's program. But I just don't think it's like, I don't really believe in strength of schedule stuff, like the long arcing strength of schedule stuff that you can predict in August. But I do think there are things you can predict and things you can know about the schedule based on its structure, and we'll get into all of that. But let's get into what you need to know. The regular season starts on a Wednesday night at the Moda Center. The Blazers will kick off the season with a couple games at home. The home opener is against the Minnesota Timberwolves on October 22nd at the Moda Center. That'll be your chance to cheer for Damian Lillard. Not wearing a jersey, maybe out of a boot. I don't really know how that works. But, in street clothes, and they announce on opening night, they'll announce everybody. He'll get announced, his return. It'll be back, something to look forward to. They play that Friday against Golden State, and then they head out on a 3-game road trip, and that's your first 5 games of the season. Minnesota, Golden State, and then to California for the Clippers and the Lakers, back-to-back, but it's no longer in the same building, but at least in the same county, beautiful Los Angeles County, and then to Salt Lake City before heading home. Game 6 kicks off we're not going to go through all 82 here, but Game 6 kicks off the first of the NBA Cup games. The Blazers are in West Group C, and let me tell you, West Group C sucks. That is where the good teams are. Easily the best group in all of the conferences, there are 3 groups in each conference, and in all of the groups, West Group C is by far the best, along with Houston, Denver, Golden State, and San Antonio. The highest combined win total of any group among the in-season tournament groups. Like, this is the group of death. This is the best. These are the best teams. Denver and Houston are going to be really good. They're going to win probably north of 50 games. The Warriors, when healthy, are going to be competitive. They're old, obviously, and health will be an issue. And San Antonio might be a team that's like truly on the rise with a healthier De'Aaron Fox and Victor Wembanyama in year 3. Yikes. But so you get that first Friday in October. That's Halloween, Friday night against the Nuggets, and then they'll play a couple more Fridays. They'll play 4 games. They'll play against all of those teams, and then depending on whether they advance or not, I'm going to say not, because those are really hard games. They'll play 2 other games, like I said, in mid-December. That will be their games. I mean, technically they're like games 20 and 21, I believe, on the schedule, but games 81 and 82 in terms of when we know about them. It's let me get into a couple other things before I get into some rants about the in-season tournament. I don't have any problem with the in-season tournament. It adds fake juice to otherwise games in October and November that you wouldn't really care about. And if you don't really care about them anyway, giving them fake juice and like fake, special courts and special, they'll be all on Amazon Prime. The like giving them a little bit special treatment doesn't make them any worse. It is at worst neutral, and at best it makes them like slightly more exciting, I guess. I do think like the once the teams advance and they make the semifinals and the finals of the in-season tournament, those games are pretty fun. Those games have proven to be fairly competitive, particularly like in that part of the schedule where you don't usually get games with stakes. Games with stakes are good. Speaking of Amazon Prime, the Blazers play 8 nationally televised games this year. 8! That's a big jump. 7 of them are on NBC/Peacock. The NBA's new media rights deal kicks in this year. Rest in peace to the good folks at Turner Broadcasting, who are still producing a show for ESPN. Boy, the media world is weird. But games no longer on TNT. NBA TV, which was also operated by Turner, has gone the way of the dodo, or at least is shelved for now in terms of broadcasting games. So the national TV games are ESPN/ABC, NBC and Peacock, and as well as Amazon Prime's streaming service. You can, it will be, and then other than those 8 nationally televised games, the other ones will be available on League Pass/Blazer Vision. If you're someone who streams, it is probably easier to stream games this year than it ever has been as a Blazer fan, but you gotta buy Peacock and you gotta buy Amazon Prime. Is that better? I don't know. But 8, it's actually worse. I could tell you that for sure. 8 national televised games is a huge jump. Last year the Blazers had 1. The year before they had 1, and both of those games were when Damian Lillard came to town. It was kind of depressing that they're only national. It's like the only time that you're an important team is when you're the most famous player who doesn't even play for your team returns home. 8 is not like in the top half of nationally televised games. Golden State and the Lakers have 34 apiece, along with the Knicks and the Thunder all have 34. The Blazers 8 puts them 21st among teams of nationally televised games. The last in the league, Utah and Washington, each have 2 apiece, along with Toronto, New Orleans, and Brooklyn. Those 5 teams all have 2 apiece. 8 puts the Blazers just behind the Kings, who have 9, and ahead of, strangely, the Miami Heat, who only have 5 nationally televised games. I will say this, a nationally televised game is worse if you are a big fan of the team, because if you're a big fan of the team, like, nobody's going to know the team better than Lamar Hurd and Kevin Calabro and Brooke Golsendam and the Blazers, like, local broadcast, bringing you the apologies to Tom Haberstroh, bringing you the, like, the local feel, right? When you have nationally televised games, it's like guys and gals, like it is folks who have not watched the team as closely, do not know it as well as you, and you're kind of like, I think a typical fan reaction is like, oh man, these people don't know my team as well as I do. I hate them. But the Blazers will still, but it is a sort of sign of like respect and maybe like a sign of like national interest. I think the Blazers playing better the second half of last season. The addition of Young Hansen, although like those games are going to be on Chinese TV, it doesn't really matter as much national TV. But yeah, like it's just a sign the Blazers are not like considered like a true bottom dweller this year, at least by their sort of media partners. 7 of those games will be on NBC/Peacock. The Blazers get 1 Amazon Prime Video game, and that will be the day after Christmas, December 26th, with an 8 p.m. start against the Clippers. 8 p.m. start. locally on the West Coast is nonsense. It's awful. An 8 p.m. start locally anywhere sucks, but it particularly sucks on the West Coast for both you trying to like go to bed early on a random weeknight and also anyone back on the other side of the country who's trying to watch a game that will tip off after 11 p.m. That's nonsense. Let's talk longest road trips, longest homestands, and some other odds and ends from the Blazers schedule. Join me in that second segment, and we will do just that. First, though, let's talk Monarch Money. Most people can't name all the financial accounts that they've got or even what those financial accounts are worth. So whether it's 401ks or investments or any other things you might have, if you are missing the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. And that's where Monarch Money comes in. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. So if you happen to agree to a $4 billion purchase this week, maybe Monarch Money can help you see where all that hockey money, where all that pickleball money, and where all that Portland Trailblazer money is going. Don't let the financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with the code LOCKEDONNBA. All right, let's keep it rolling, talking more Blazers schedule stuff. Last year, the Blazers had a 7-game road trip, truly just an enormous amount of time to be away from the friendly confines of the Moda Center, just away from your family, away from your friends, away from the bed you sleep in if you're a Blazers player or a Blazers employee. That's a long trip. This year, their longest road trips are thrice. They will be on the road for 5 gamers. November 8th through 16, February 26th through March 6th. That's the end of February to the first week of March. And then again at the end of March, or the middle of March, March 15th to 22. They do have a 4-gamer in December that could end up being a 5-game trip, depending on how the NBA Cup games shake out, because they have a 4-gamer that wraps up, and then on the heels of that, they will get a scheduled one of their NBA Cup games, whether they advance in the group or more likely do not advance in the group. More likely from my mind. It could happen. It could happen. They could win. They could beat the Nuggets and the Rockets, right? It could happen. They could be champions in Vegas this winter. But depending on what happens with those games, there's a chance that they have another 5-game road trip in December. December right now looks relatively home heavy. It's their home heaviest month. They're home for the holidays. But that's. We'll see what the first little bit of December look like, that middle part of December. The longest homestands of the season. Last year, they also had a 7-game homestand. They were here for a fat stretch, but they played every other day during that stretch. They played like 7 games over 15 days, just like every other night. You play a basketball game, but you do get to sleep in your own bed. But they've got 2 5-game homestands, December 22nd to the 29th. Like I said, home for the holidays, but they do play the day after Christmas against the Clippers in that nationally televised game. And then they head out after that homestand to beautiful Oklahoma City for New Year's Eve, where they'll play on December 31st and then spend, ring in the new year and spend part of New Year's Day in Oklahoma City, and then traveling as they continue on with a road trip. And then their second 5-game homestand is February 2nd through the 9th in early February. I think this is also a meaningful stretch of the schedule here, is that they end the season with 7 of their last 10 games at home, including Game 82 versus Sacramento. Now, like I said, projecting out into games that happen in April is a fool's errand, but I am a fool, so come with me along this errand. In the past, I have kind of, last season, I'll say, not even in the past. Last season, I would couch some of my comments with saying things like, well, if you want the Blazers to win, that's the way I would sort of talk about the team. And quite frankly, that's not something I'm going to do this year, because last year, it was unclear to me why they wanted to win, and I never got it, and I just didn't understand the direction, and probably still don't understand the direction they chose last season. However, this year, I'm not deluded by like, well, when are they going to lose? Like, this is a team that's like, these are a bunch of like cold, calculated losers. When are they going to start losing on purpose? They're not doing that this year. They're trying to win basketball games. Whether they're able to win basketball games at a level that's like deeply beneficial, I think remains to be seen. But like, what their approach is not a surprise any longer. Like, we know the deal. I know the score of the game, and the score of the game is that the Blazers are going to be competitive 1 through 82. And so that gets us to that final 10-game stretch. If this is a team, and they want to make, they want to push forward and like be competitive, right? They're a team that is trying to win, maybe they're not trying to like win the championship with the roster that they have, but they're certainly like, they're much more interested in winning any individual game than sort of like developmental investment, right? So like, I think that's abundantly clear from the decisions they've made over the last 2 seasons, or last maybe 2 off seasons, I should say. So these final 10 games of the season, instead of being like, well, if you want them to win, they do want to win, right? And so like having even not knowing who the opponents are, just knowing that you play 7 out of your final 10 at home is a chance to make that push if you are a team that is on the cusp of getting the play-in. Because at that time of year, there are some teams that have pulled the plug. They're like, we're not going to make the playoffs. We stink. We'd rather lose. Who cares? And there's teams that are like, we're pretty much locked into third. like cool, come what may, like we'll just be third, like we've got a 2-game lead with however many left, with 6 left. And we know that like our magic number is 3. Right? Like we just got to win. We got to win 3 of these. We feel good. Or our magic number is 1. We have to win 1 of our final 6 games to lock up the 4th seed or 5th seed in the West, whatever it is. Like you're just going to play teams at that final 10-game stretch that kind of have most of their season is locked, like most of their situation is locked, or if their situation isn't locked, what they're trying to do is lose. That's like the weird time of year in the NBA. So the Blazers, if they are making that push to the play-in or to the playoffs, if you really want to get greedy here, like closing with a home-heavy push is really useful for that. They start the year with such an aggressive stretch against the West. 16 of their first 20 games are against the Western Conference, including their first 8. So, like, it's going to be hard. Some of the nature of, like, they play however many games against West versus the East is kind of just like how the schedule works. You play 30 games against Eastern Conference teams. You play 52 against Western Conference teams. You're going to play more, almost twice as much, right? You can play 40% more. I think the sort of, it's going to start out challenging, right? Because you're going to play a bunch of Western Conference teams, and there's pretty much no bad teams in the West except for New Orleans and Utah. And New Orleans will probably be as healthy as they'll ever be at the beginning of the season, right? Like that might be the best version of the Pelicans. So you get this little push at the end of the year with these final 10 games, and then you get game 82. And why I mentioned game 82 against Sacramento, you get a home game against the Kings. Right now, I would say that the Kings and the Blazers, both basically by anyone who is a prognosticator, they're right in that same tier. I kind of think the Blazers are better than the Kings just because I think the Kings roster makes no sense. But I don't think the Blazers are like significantly way better, like insultingly better than Sacramento. And if the Kings were to finish with a better record than the Blazers, it would not necessarily surprise me. But like right now, as I sit here in August, I think Portland is better than Sacramento because I think the roster makes more sense. Even though Sacramento clearly has more top-end talent and certainly some more name recognition on the roster. But if you do think they're in the same tier, and I think that's very reasonable to think they're in the same tier, game 82, which is usually totally meaningless by the time you get there for, I don't know, something like 28 of the 30 teams in the league, that could be meaningful for the Blazers and Kings. They could be jockeying for 9-10. They could be jockeying for 8-9. They could be jockeying for on the cusp, right? Like who's going to finish 11th and miss the play-in, who's going to finish 10th. You could get a meaningful game 82, and you get a home game, and it could be one of those where it's like, not like a 2-game swing where it's like, hey, if you beat them, you're in. Like you can catch them and you'll have the head-to-head record, tiebreaker type of thing. Like it could be a final meaningful game based on kind of where the Blazers are right there. I think the close to the schedule is nice, but like that's mostly just based on the belief and the well-established belief and that home games are easier than road games for basically every team ever in the history of the sport. And all sports, really. Although I do think there is some evidence that home court advantage has slightly dwindled over the last 15 years. I've read some of that, but even then, you're still more likely to win a home game than a road game, and the Blazers close with a home game, including one that might be meaningful in the last game of the season. That was my fool's errand. I'm a fool. I don't really believe in strength of schedule stuff, but I do really like the website Positive Residual, and they've got a bunch of interesting data related to the schedule that does include some strength of schedule stuff that I will generally ignore, but I do think there's some other sort of nuts and bolts on how the schedule is put together and built that I do think is meaningful. And we'll talk about those meaningful things like rest advantages and disadvantages and back-to-backs all in that third segment. Join me there, won't you? Still a pass first point guard. I'm still Mike Richmond. You're still listening to Locked On Blazers. Like I said, I don't believe in the long arching strength of schedule analysis because of the obvious myriad factors that make projecting games months down the line impossible to accurately predict as to be entirely meaningless. It's just not a useful tool the way I see it. Can you project like a couple weeks out, 10 days out? Yeah, usually. But trying to say like what games are going to be hard without knowing who is going to be injured and available, without knowing how the trade deadline is going to shake out, like without all of those things, like I just don't think you could say like these games in March are hard. You can say like, wow, that's a long stretch on the road. Yeah. Okay. Wow. That stretch, February 26th to March 6th, that's 5 road games. That's a hard stretch. Right. But I in general do not think that projecting in when the schedule comes out, strength of schedule stuff where the Blazers on the website that I really, really like and appreciate, Positive Residual, where the Blazers have the second hardest strength of schedule in the NBA. I do not think that is meaningful. What the real truth is that the West is really good, and the Blazers aren't one of the really good teams in the West, so they're going to play a bunch of teams throughout the year that are good because they play in the harder conference. But when and how those things shake out and who's healthy and when and all those things, that's so much easier to be certain of when you get closer as opposed to further away. But I do think, are you tired? Or is the other team tired is actually probably a much stronger indicator of strength of schedule than like overall talent from this distance. Once you get close, you can kind of know how the talent shakes out. I'm not anti-talent analysis. I'm just saying there's injuries and stuff and trades, okay? But the Blazers, let's talk rest advantage and rest disadvantages. That would be when you come in with a night off and the team that you're playing does not have that night off. They're on the second night of a back-to-back and you are fresh and rested. That's a rest advantage. The reverse, when you're coming in on a back-to-back and they are rested to not play the night before, that is the rest disadvantage. There's for the rest advantage games, I think it's useful. Everyone in the league has between 7 and 14 rest advantage games. The Blazers have 11. It's pretty good. That's pretty good. They're right in the middle. They don't have the fewest in the league, which is always money for them, but they didn't get the greatest gifts and have 14. The rest disadvantage games though, and these can be really, really tough. You're just like, you're playing on the road on the second night of a back-to-back against a team that's been waiting in their own home gym. Everyone in the league has between 6 and 14. The majority of teams have between 10 and 12. Nobody has 13. So everyone really has between 6 and 12, except for the Warriors, whoops, who have 14 rest disadvantage games on the schedule. An older basketball team with the most rest disadvantage games on the schedule. What could go wrong for a relatively thin roster, captained, championed, guided by mid-30s stars? The Blazers have 9 rest disadvantage games. 21 more teams in the league have more rest disadvantage games. 21 more teams. You'll note that none of the NBA Cup games are on back-to-back, so the Blazers, we only know 80 of their games, but the games 81 and 82, they will not be rest disadvantage games or advantage games. Everyone's always gets a night off before those happen. So the Blazers at 9, that's like I said, 21 teams have more rest disadvantage games than them. They actually have a relatively solid schedule in terms of, are they going to be tired or unreasonably tired playing against, they'll play on equal footing with their opponent 62 times this season, and 11 where they'll have an advantage and 9 will have a disadvantage. Everyone in the league has between 13 and 16 back-to-backs. That's when you play on consecutive nights. The Blazers have 15, which is above average. 18 teams have fewer back-to-backs. It's a slightly above average. But yeah, right in the middle there, 13 to 16. Everybody's got them. Blazers with 15. The Blazers have been decent back-to-backs, just like under Chauncey Billups. I think that might be just an aberration, but they were fairly competitive in those games last year. Air miles. This is always matters because geography just exists. Unfortunately, it just exists. Like the United States of America, along with, I guess, all of North America, because of the team that plays in Toronto in Canada. But the United States of America and this continent in general is very large. It's just geographically large. And the Blazers are located in the Northwest Outpost, which is just far away from everything else. The closest team is Sacramento, which is 400 and some miles, 500 miles. Sacramento's pretty far south. It ain't close. Denver, not close. These are your closest teams. Salt Lake City, not close. So the Blazers are always going to be at the top just because when you get in an airplane, you have to fly. It isn't a little short hop, skip, and a jump. I like Sacramento flight's 70 minutes, but it ain't nothing. The Blazers will travel the second most air miles of any team in the league. Orlando is number 1 and Memphis is 3rd. Memphis, yeah, because Memphis is located in Tennessee on the east side of the Mississippi River, but also the Memphis Grizzlies play in the Western Conference. Los Angeles is far away from that portion of the Mississippi River, all of the portions, but particularly that portion as well. A real bummer for the Grizzlies based on geography. If the league should ever expand, the Grizzlies should try hard to get to the Eastern Conference, not only because it's been the JV conference for 20 years, if not longer, but just because they'll travel less. Orlando, some of it is maybe just tough scheduling for them because they're not even in South Florida. They're in Central Florida, the northern half of a very long state, so shockingly long state. There are some teams that are close, but Orlando leads, according to Positive Residual, leads the NBA this year and will lead the NBA this year in miles traveled. Here's the Midwest advantage for you. If you are located in the Midwest and you do play in the Eastern Conference, unlike Memphis, which is the American South for sure in terms of regional location, but in terms geographically in the country is pretty much in the middle, close to the middle. But the Pacers, that beautiful Midwest dominance, they fly the least air miles of any team in the league, 35,000. The Blazers with the second most at 50,000. 15,000 less miles traveled. It's better to be closer to other teams. It all kind of comes out in the wash. It is a disadvantage, but if you're talented, you can overcome it, et cetera, et cetera. I do think the rest disadvantage and advantage stuff is more meaningful than the air miles traveled, but the air miles traveled is not nothing. It is a long flight home, often for the Blazers after a long road trip, which means you get in really late, et cetera, et cetera. It's just the NBA is a grueling schedule, and the regular season is probably too long. That said, and this is my final thought here on why I don't think that I don't think the schedule matters that much in terms of I've mentioned this before. I've worked in Blazers media in various capacities for over a decade. I started in, I guess, my first full season on the beats was 2014-15. I've been at it, and I've worked in a bunch of different places, and one of the places I worked with was alongside Jason Quick at the Oregonian. And he would always make me do this exercise when the schedule came out to write win loss, and predict and say, okay, what'd you get to after the schedule came out? And I liked doing that because it was a fun thing to talk about with a colleague. But how the heck do you know? How the heck do you predicting maybe the first 5 games is possible, first 2 games is possible, right? Okay, Minnesota and Golden State to begin the season, and then a road trip with 2 games in LA and a game against Utah. I would say 1 very winnable game against Utah, but all of those other games are hard. The Blazers will probably be underdogs in their first 4 games and 4 of their first 5, and 5 of their first 6 because they play Denver on the way back. It's gonna be hard, right? And I think teams are often completely different in October than they end up being in late February and early March, right? Like, not only do they make trades and stuff, but also like teams get better. Like the Blazers were just a totally different team to begin last season when they got smoked by 36 on opening night. Then when they got to the middle of the year, they kind of found what their identity was and started playing to that identity. And just like they were just a different basketball team that matured and got better by virtue of playing 40 pretty bad games and kind of figuring out what a good version of them was going to have to look like. But the games in October and November still matter. They still count. And if, to get back to my point that I made in the second segment, if you want the Blazers to win, right? And you probably do, and they certainly do. If you are pining for a playoff push, it's a lot of P's, a lot of plosives in the microphone. You got to hit the ground run. While so much changes over the course of the marathon season, in the standings, game 1 is equally as meaningful as game 82. While it does seem like there are a lot of throwaway nonsense games in there, and there probably are in the grand scheme, you probably only need about 60 to really determine who's good and who's not, and like have the standings like kind of normalize. You're still going to play, and I think the West is going to be so tight that like all of these really matter. And so while I don't think the schedule really matters, each individual game is meaningful, especially if the Blazers have playoff aspirations as they do, or I should say postseason aspirations as they do. That is going to do it for today's show. I got 3 more shows coming to you next week. Danny Morang of 105.1 The Fan is going to join the program, and we will talk all things Trail Blazers. Look for those shows Monday, Wednesday, and Friday next week. There's also, I am working to get a bonus episode related to the new Blazers sale. That will come out likely on Tuesday, so look for that one. That'll be 4 shows next week, even during the season when we do 3. How about that? Locked On Blazers. If you made it this deep in the show, tell a friend about the program. I say with confidence, I don't think you're getting this volume of stuff anywhere else. I don't think anyone's covering the Blazers quite like this time of year. So tell your friends about the program. Tell them they can get it wherever they get podcasts and also on YouTube. I appreciate you listening. Come back for more shows next week. I'll talk to you soon.